Good morning, everyone. Welcome back today. State of Tennessee versus Christopher Bassett, Richard Williams. We are ready to resume our trial in preliminary matters from the state this morning.
One of the media folks asked me about the not showing the videos or the faces of witnesses. And they asked whether or not they could report their names, and I told them that'd be something you could answer.
Yeah, there's nothing in the law that says you can't report anybody's name as part of the public record as a witness. I think the media's practice is usually that they don't report names of minors. Yeah. That's up to them, and there's nothing in the law saying that they can. So that's their decision on initials or what. So we'll leave that up to them.
I do have one other thing. Going back to board diary, if we could just put on the record, I believe that it should be clear that both sides did not exhaust.
I'm going to do a supplemental order too, because under those, is it Baker's factors?
I don't know whatever those factors are.
Yeah, I can't remember what the case is. There's some things that you can't determine until you accept the jury, and I put that in my order. So I'm going to go back to a supplemental order saying this is what happened during jury selection. So that'll be my record. Anything else, Jim?
No, sir.
All right,
No, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the state sent us out the list of their witnesses that they were saying was under 18.
Right.
I know several of them when they were interviewed said they were 16,
Right.
which should make them 18 now. And I'd ask the court if we could all have all of them state each individual their date of birth.
The email that I sent out said one person was under 18.
Yeah, Zaevion Dobson was under 18.
Okay, so is that the only one then?
That's under 18 now.
Okay.
And that's the only one that the law requires that they not be broadcast.
Okay, just the one.
The others are just discretionary on my part that can't show their faces. That's what I ordered.
Okay. And just one other thing, Your Honor. I know when I turned on the TV, it was all over all night last night. I would ask the court if they could individually board diary each juror to see if they watched anything.
I'm going to ask that same question I ask. I'm going to do it the same way every time. I bring them in and say, were you exposed to anything? And they raise their hand, then I'll do an individual idea. But if they don't raise their hand, I'm not going to go through and poll everyone. I'm going to do the same thing every day that I said at the beginning I was doing this one. Mr. Roger, any comment? All right, very good then, folks. So we can line and direct. Bring on. You know, have the next one. All right, folks, you have a seat. Statement acknowledger. Mr. Bethany, ready to call?
So wait.
Wait, call, Ms. Lee. Good morning, folks. Thank you again for being here promptly this morning. We're ready to resume the state's case in chief. I'm going to ask you that important question. I'm going to ask you everyone. Were any of you exposed to any information about this case, or did anybody attempt to talk to you about this case? Anyone? All right, I see my head check no. Nobody's saying yes, so very good. All right, gentlemen, will you please vote next, please?
Jimmy Wilson.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in the case now on trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Have a seat, officer.
Give the jury your name, please, sir.
Officer Jimmy Wilson,
And by whom are you employed?
Knoxville Police Department.
In what capacity?
Patrol.
And how long have you been employed by the Knoxville Police Department?
About 12 years.
Were you so employed back on December 17th, 2015, almost 2 years ago?
Yes, sir.
I'll ask you if you had occasion to respond to a shooting call on Dallas Street here in Knoxville.
Yes, sir.
And do you recall where you were when you got the call and what you did in response to that call?
I don't remember where I was when I got the call. I do remember responding to the call.
When you got there, what do you recall initially observing?
A house that had been shot up was the initial observation.
Okay. And what did you do when you got on the scene as far as determining what all had happened there?
I went in and made contact with the female victim and her female child that was there at the time.
And where was the female victim?
She was laying in like a little bathroom area, face down, with a gunshot wound to her backside.
I apologize. A female child as well?
Yes, sir.
Do you know the approximate age of that child?
It would just be a guess, shot in the dark, about 81.
What then did you do, or what were your responsibilities after that?
From that point, medical personnel arrived, and then it was just securing the crime scene. That was it.
Now, you recall what type of cruiser or police vehicle you were driving?
I was in a Chevy Tahoe.
Is that kind of a different sort of cruiser?
Yes, sir. That's a K9 vehicle.
A K-9 vehicle. Do you have a K-9 officer with you? with you at that time?
Yes, sir, at that time.
Is that a cruiser equipped with video recording equipment?
Yes, sir, it is.
And did it have audio recording equipment?
It is equipped with audio recordings.
And have you had a chance to review your video, your cruiser video?
Yes, sir.
And was the audio working on this particular occasion?
No, sir, it wasn't. It shows that it was on, but no sound was coming through.
In any event, did it capture some certain images that were within the range of the camera?
Yes.
I'd like to show a portion of that shows some of the activity around that scene. And if I need to pause it for you to explain anything, just let me know and we'll pause it. Now, from that starting point, can you tell us what you're able to recall after from viewing that portion of that video about what was going on?
Right here, Knoxville Fire Department's inside. There's some family showing up. The victim of this shooting's family is showing up. I believe it was her mother that showed up here at some point within this time frame here.
Okay.
Along with her son, actually shows up here, should be here in just a few minutes. He'll end up showing up here and walking past my car.
And as we get to the point on here where some of that happens, if you'll let me know, we'll pause it and let you explain it further.
Okay. And there he is there. That's the victim's son.
Okay.
He got out of the black BMW just out of camera there.
And I'll ask you about that in a minute, but for purposes of a time, can you tell us what time that is that he passes in front of your camera?
1939. That'd be 7:39 p.m.
And where does he go?
He goes towards the residence there inside the house.
And what about there? Was there?
That's I don't know if she was a family member or a friend that showed up. I didn't get an identity on her.
Okay. And what about right there?
That's another male that showed up wearing a dark hoodie and like dark jeans. I did not get an ID on him. He was, I want to say, a friend of the victim's son or a family friend there.
You mentioned the victim's son. How were you able to determine that that person you told us about was the victim's son?
I talked to him inside the house.
Okay.
And then a few other officers talked to him there. And he can be heard on, I think it's, or the grandmother can be heard on Officer Schroeder's video, as a matter of fact, saying his name as he's getting in the car earlier.
Okay.
And then there's another male that, I just touched the screen, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I did that.
You can actually, if you want to do that, let's circle, but these schools right here. Let's see, clear, not there.
Yes. And then there's another male, he's wearing like a Adidas pants with stripes down the side, a white shirt underneath a black hoodie type sweatshirt.
And I know it's kind of dark, but can you point out to us the stripe on the pants that you told us about?
Yes, sir. I'm not good at this thing, but at the tip of that,
Okay.
that's what it says.
All right. Maybe that's a better view there. Is that you there in
Yes, sir, that's me.
what is it you're doing at that point?
I was talking to somebody, I didn't tell you who it was. That's one. I believe this is the point where the ambulance shows up. It took a little while for an ambulance to get there. I believe I was walking back to the intersection to tell them to kind of hurry up.
Okay. Right there, what are we looking at?
That's the male that I identified earlier with the Adidas type pants on, with the white t-shirt and the black hoodie or pullover type shirt there.
You know what direction he is going?
He is going south right there on Dallas Street.
Toward, you mentioned the car earlier, is it going toward that
Yeah, it's
car?
going towards that BMW there, yes, sir. That right there is, and I'll just kind of touch it there, just and roll
Okay.
this thing. That gentleman there is the victim's son. He's actually wearing a different type of shirt. When he walked in the first time, he was wearing like a jacket or some type of pullover type winter clothing.
And he actually went in the house, did you say?
Yes, sir, he did. And then he goes back and gets in the car, and that BMW was actually sitting there with his parking lights on as well. That he gets out of and goes back into.
And have you had occasion to review Officer Traylor's video that shows that vehicle?
Yes, sir, I have.
And can you tell us whether or not this is the same person that exited that vehicle and re-entered that vehicle several minutes later?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. 1944. Judge, if we could prepare a late file exhibit for that, we added a little bit of the clip than what we originally added. But I'll prepare a disc if I could late file that as a clip.
No issue.
That's for
It's going to be exhibit 455 when we prepare that.
At this point, we'll enter it with the understanding that you will late file.
I will. You can keep standing that if you need to. If you take a marker of some kind and kind of draw this diagram where your crew is going to be parked.
My cruiser would have been right here where I'm drawing a little blue box, in the general area there on Dallas Street. General area, I can't say specifically.
All right, Mr. Rogers, you want to take my second first?
Judge, if I think the juror needs a pen.
Okay. Got one? Very good. All right, Mr. Jones, you're next.
Officer Wilson, you met me before, haven't you?
Yes, sir, I have.
Well aware of who I am.
Yes, sir.
All right, know my law partner, Mr. Tanner, right?
Yes, sir.
Very well, don't you?
Yes, sir.
I actually worked with him for a number of years, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. That being said, you've been called here today to talk to us about what you observed at 238 Dallas Street. And do you know approximately what time you were called? Now, we've got the video, and I wrote down the part and time that the district attorney, and I don't have any issue with it, but he says 1939:06 is the part that we're going to have clipped out that the jury's going to have the benefit of seeing. Do you know what time you arrived, or is that about the time you arrived?
No, I would have arrived prior to that, and just to be honest, I'd have to go back and actually look at the timestamp on the video.
Okay.
Or then I'm going to call off even giving you an approximation to what time it was there. I would be safe saying sometime within the 7 o'clock hour.
Okay.
You know, prior to that. But
I take no issue with that time, but what I wanted to be clear to the jury, when you're talking about the observations here today, you weren't sitting in that Chevy Tahoe that entire period of time, correct?
no, sir, I was not.
Okay, so when you are relating that, it's because you are familiar with the camera angle and basically the recordation that, as a matter of the standard operating procedure of the Knoxville Police Department, occurs through the windshield of your vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, so when you're testifying about things that you've observed off of a video, not necessarily you observed with your own eyes at the exact time that they're happening, right?
Yes, not at the exact time sometimes.
Right, because if you were physically, and just for example, if you were physically in the residence, and at some point in time you did go in the residence, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you are attending to the victim of this shooting, Linda Perry. She was shot in the buttocks, right?
Yes, sir.
You will agree with me, you couldn't, by the very nature of where you are, be aware of what's going on outside the residence, could you?
Yes, sir, you're correct.
Right. Somebody could physically walk by your cruiser and at least contemporaneous. I understand you could go back and review the video. You wouldn't know that, would you?
No, sir, I wouldn't.
Okay. And also, we've spoke, and they asked you about the other officer that you viewed his video, Officer Traylor, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you've worked with Officer Traylor for a period of time.
Yes, sir.
And also, you are familiar with the sector supervisor, Lieutenant Taylor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Just so that we understand, their vehicles were there as well, correct?
Yes, sir, they were.
Okay. And in relation to where your vehicle was, were they behind you or were they facing you? Where did they park their vehicles so that we can orient our jurors as to their videos?
Trailers would have been, I believe that's Porter Avenue to the south there.
Yes, sir.
His was parked on the west corner there of Porter Avenue at Dallas Street.
Okay.
So it won't be about where that white writing is there on Porter Avenue.
Where he's got it? Okay.
Whatever that writing is.
Whatever this is right here, if you
Yes.
put M trailer.
That would be it. That's
Okay. And what is this blue?
That's approximately my car.
Okay, so you guys were kind of catty corner, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When we arrived, I actually passed the house and had to turn around and he backed up into that spot.
Okay.
So,
So we've got angles of cameras, basically for all intents and purposes. Were you pulled in facing this way?
yes, sir, I was.
Would you do me a favor? I've got a blue pen, so, well, let's use red since the gentleman used blue. I want you to put an arrow on the direction that your vehicle was facing, just because when we look at it and we're looking at video angles, I want to make sure, oh, we got it, thank you. Okay, and which way, now Traylor's got an arrow on his, would that be consistent with the direction you remember him facing?
Yes, sir, that would be, his vehicle was facing eastbound, mine was facing northbound.
Would it be fair to say, if you recall, and if you don't worry about it, that basically the yard area, we've got this red delineation around the residence on Dallas, that would be considered the crime scene?
Yes, sir, that and actually in the roadway, we discovered a little bit later on into the call was as well.
Okay, you discovered it was a drive-by, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, in the strictest sense, that based upon information and belief, that a car drove by and people fired a firearm out of a car, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that being said, then, you discovered later that the crime scene was the roadways surrounding this property on Dallas as well, correct?
Yes, sir, it was Dallas Street and some of the corner, or the intersection there at Porter and Dallas.
Why is it important, sir, to secure a crime scene?
For preservation of evidence, sir.
And that's part of the general orders and standard operating procedure of the Knoxville Police Department, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right, and what is a crime scene log?
The crime scene log is documentation of who enters and exits the crime scene.
And who is responsible for maintaining a crime scene log when you arrive at a crime scene?
A patrol officer will take the responsibility initially, and will typically handwrite a crime scene log out on a piece of notebook paper, and then hand it over to the investigator later that will transpose it where it can be read.
Okay, so usually is it typed up then?
Yes, sir, it gets typed up, yes, sir.
Certainly in all cases of import and gravity, important cases, it would be typed up, right?
Yes, sir, I would imagine so.
In your experience, in how many years did you say you've been there?
Almost 12 years, sir.
In 12 years, that's the general operating procedure, isn't it?
From my understanding, yes.
And would you consider homicide a serious crime?
I would, sir.
The most serious.
I would, sir.
And you would expect, if there was a homicide, that there would be a crime scene log, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir, I would.
And you would expect that because it's important to know who went into the crime scene and at what time.
Yes, sir.
And it's important to know when they left
Yes, sir.
because of the possibility of contamination, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay? And in this particular case, we saw not one, not two, and I'm not finding fault with you. First off, let's go here because I don't want you to think I'm picking at you in any way, shape, manner, or form. You're out there, you're working hard. Were you in your Tahoe or standing immediately behind it or beside it or in front of it when we saw not one, not two, but I believe 3 individuals enter the crime scene?
Just to be honest with you, I don't know where I was at. I know one or two folks, I was outside of my camera view, and then I come from the front of my camera view, so that...
You don't know where you're at, in fairness. I mean, I get it. It's a busy scene. A lot's going on. It's fair to say that if you saw folks actually physically enter a crime scene, you know that it would be your responsibility to say, no, sir, stop, who are you, request who they are,
Yes,
identify themselves. If they're not law enforcement personnel, they don't need to be in there, do they?
That's correct, sir.
And you learned that the one gentleman that ran into the crime scene, you say he came out of a black BMW and he was the son of the victim, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he was wearing a black hoodie, correct?
No, sir, it was the first gentleman that was on there, that was like the darker gray hoodie and then the gray long-sleeve t-shirt.
Okay, let's look at that video if we could.
Just distorted.
Okay, well, I mean, you tell me. I don't know what he came through with. Is it fair to say that as we sit here today, the first fella that runs in there and the guy that goes out there and moves the BMW, right?
Yes, sir.
He's dead, isn't he? Brandon Perry?
I honestly don't know if he's dead or not, sir.
Okay, don't know. Nobody's told you.
I have no clue if he is or not.
Okay. The woman that got shot, you know her name was Linda Perry, right?
I would trust that, sir. I cannot remember names from 2 years ago.
Lisa Perry, I'm sorry. I said Linda. I got, Linda on my mind. I'm sorry.
I can't remember her name. I've not looked at the report, sir.
Okay.
I'd be a liar if I told you I would.
Do you remember the boy's name, the son's name?
I do not, sir.
Okay. And certainly didn't write it down.
No, sir. I didn't.
And you don't, let me show you. Can I approach? May I see exhibit 600? This is the crime scene log that we were provided as a result of a discovery request. Do you see any civilians listed on the crime scene log, or do you recognize all of those names as being ambulatory personnel, fire department personnel, or law enforcement?
They're first responder personnel, sir.
Okay. So it is fair to say that this crime scene log on this shooting doesn't contain the names of any of the black males that entered the crime scene area, or there was a black female that likewise came in, correct?
Right, well, and I will say, sir, that early on, especially in chaotic scenes, sometimes some of that does not get captured just because. And Officer Traylor had been on his own for almost a year at the point that he was filling out a crime scene log, and that may have been his second one that he ever did.
Okay.
So things will get missed within that.
Okay, I'm not throwing stones. I'm just wanting to make sure that this jury is aware relative to that, and so that we don't necessarily have to belabor the point. If we could go to 1939-23. Let me show you something on this video, please.
It's going to have to be part of the late filing exhibit. If you got it and you want to put it up there, that's fine.
You know what? It's not worth expending.
No, Keisha says she can do it, that's fine.
Super.
1939 what?
1939-23. We can get that.
Okay. $1939.23.
Yes, ma'am, please.
This is 1938.55.
That's fine. I mean, I know how they jump, and it's tough to get them
Yes,
there.
sir.
Okay. That's the first black male that you said entered the scene, correct?
Yes, sir, and that's, we were both correct on the color. It looks like his sleeve is a gray and the other part is black.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't want it to look like I was saying he didn't have black on, and, okay, that's the same young man that we saw later come out just wearing the gray,
Like the long sleeve t-shirt.
right, he had part of it on. Looks like he peeled something off while he's in his house, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he's the fella that moved the BMW, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know where you were when the BMW pulled up?
I don't know if it was on the front porch or inside.
Okay.
Because I was between the two quite a bit.
So it's fair to say you don't know who would have been driving the BMW when it pulled up?
Other than the fact that when I review the video later, I see him exiting the driver's side.
Okay, well, that's fine. The fella that we just talked about, right?
Yes.
The man in the gray, right? Well, the gray and the black.
Yes.
Had black on, gray sleeves, and then subsequently had all gray on. Well, not all gray, but he had a gray top on, and he goes and moves the vehicle. And you learned that was the victim's son.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you also saw another black male then subsequently enter the premises, correct?
Yes.
Crime scene, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you also saw a third black male enter, and he had an Adidas stripe on his pants, didn't he?
Yes, I believe that's in the history, yes.
Okay, so that's 3 black males and 1 black female entered, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you only saw 2 exit, right? When you reviewed your video?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's fair to say that all 3 of these black males came into the crime scene, into the residence at different times.
Yes, within a couple of minutes of each other.
Right. But what I'm saying is they didn't come running through, one guy 5 seconds, and the other guy 5 seconds behind, and 10 seconds. There's a marked delineation in time when they actually arrived at 238 Dallas.
Yes.
At least as far as your video shows.
Yes.
What shift had you worked that night, or do you recall, sir?
At that time, I was on an afternoon shift, sir.
And just for the clarity of the jury, what did that shift go from starting time to end time on December 17th, 2015? Approximately.
right after we changed, we swapped times. So I think it was the 3 p.m. to 1 a.m. time frame. I think it had already swapped to that.
Okay.
So,
Were you dispatched during that shift to a shooting at 934 Virginia Avenue around 408, 410?
no, sir, I don't believe I was.
Okay, don't.
I work the East District, and that's in the West District.
No problem. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time, sir.
Officer Wilson, how many times have you watched that video?
That's when, or about the third time.
Third time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what were your responsibilities that night?
Initially there, it was to provide aid to the victim that was there. And then it's kind of fluid, never changing. So went from that to, securing the crime scene and stuff like that. At some point, I put up crime scene tape, and then at another point through the night, we ended up marking shell casings. So.
Okay, so when you arrived on a scene, your initial responsibility was to provide aid to the victim?
Yes, well,
Okay.
to make sure it's safe, and then, yes, to make
Okay,
sure.
and what did you do for the victim?
I'm sorry?
What did you do?
I summoned KFD and ensured the scene was safe so they could come in and give her professional help.
Okay. Did you talk to her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. And then you summons the fire department?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then what did you do after that?
Just to be honest, an actual detail account, I couldn't tell you
Okay.
off the top of my head.
At some point, did you secure the crime scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And what all did that include? Did you put up tape?
Yes, ma'am. The tape was eventually put up down at the intersection of Dallas and Porter Street because we realized that it was a little more broad than what we initially thought.
Okay. Did you do that by yourself or did someone help you?
No, ma'am, I can't even say that I physically put up all the tape at all.
Okay.
I can just say I assisted in getting folks out and doing that. Everybody on the scene would have had some part in that.
Okay. And do you recall who all was on the scene?
I know myself, Lieutenant Taylor, Officer Traylor, Officer Wright, and from there, I sat down and watched a video of who pulls up where Officer Peace-Heimer would have probably been there. Because we were partners at that time. When a shooting comes out, about everybody working goes to it. So
Okay. How long do you estimate you were there?
I would say at least an hour.
Hour.
I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Rogers?
Just briefly, I think Mr. Jones asked you if talked to you about 3 black males going into the residence. Is it actually just the one that went into the residence?
Yes, sir. The son's actually all that went in. The others were stopped out front in the front yard.
In what ultimately became the crime scene?
Yes, sir.
That's all, thank you.
Actually, 3 black males and a black female went into the crime scene,
Well, the
right?
black female, sir, if you watch it, she passes the opening of the fence there that goes to the residence.
Right.
Yes, ultimately, that street became the crime scene, but
I
at
got
that
you.
time we didn't.
Perhaps not at that time, but at least as we sit here today, what you as a professional police officer with the Knoxville Police Department define as the crime scene included the street, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At what point in time did you learn that, and we're talking about crime scene here, it was a drive-by shooting?
Honestly, sir, I couldn't tell you.
Almost immediately upon arrival?
I can tell you there was shots fired into the house. I don't think we definitively said that it was a drive-by until we found the shell casings in the roadway.
Do you know what time you found the shell casings in the roadway?
I have no clue. I'd have to watch the entire video to sit here and walk it out for you.
Okay, but you knew you had a shooting, and the shooting went from outside going in, not inside going out, right?
That was the initial assumption.
All right, and it's,
But we had nothing factual until we got inside and actually started talking to the victim and the witness that was inside.
right, so you had already talked to the victim then, because remember, you said on direct that you came back outside and you dealt with crowd control, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so how many times did you go in the residence, once or twice?
That I couldn't tell you, sir.
Okay, but when you were back out there and you're describing these events on the video, you were then aware that someone had shot from outside in, right?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay, so you knew you had,
I'm sorry, I'm getting confused.
I got you, you knew you had a broader crime scene than perhaps just a domestic or something of that nature, right?
Yes, sir, I mean, we learned that the road was looked on the crime scene.
Okay, no problem.
Anything else, Ms. Lee?
No.
Mr. Rogers? Hey, y'all should have sat down. If you don't, please call your next one.
Bethany, fine?
If you would please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the case now on trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Have a seat, Mr. Rogers.
Give us your name, please.
Bethany Fine,
And for the record, can you spell your last name?
F-I-N-E,
And where are you employed?
Knoxville Police Department.
What do you do with the Knoxville Police Department?
I'm an evidence technician for the forensics unit.
What is an evidence technician?
I work crime scenes. I go out and document and process the things and collect evidence.
How long have you been with the Knoxville Police Department?
Started the department in May of 2014 and in the records office, and then I transferred to the forensics unit in August of 2015.
And you were so employed in that position on December 17, 2015?
I was.
Do you recall that evening?
I did.
How would you describe that evening?
It was in December. It was cold. We were busy that night. It was really my first night that I really got to experience any type of violent crime.
Was that the number of shootings that you responded to that evening, was that normal or not normal?
It was not normal from what I had experienced before that.
So what was the first shooting that you responded to?
I went out just to observe at one on Dallas Street. Another technician was the primary technician there. I was observing only.
And who was that technician?
Eddie Johnson.
And were you with someone or were you by yourself?
I was with Rebecca Taylor. I was in the final phase of my training at the time.
Now, so after you are there at Dallas Street, what do you then do after you leave Dallas Street?
After Dallas Street, sometime after that, we got a call for another shooting in Lonsdale Homes.
And so when you get a call for that shooting, what do you then do?
We got in the car and we responded and went to that scene.
Now, each officer, do you have like a car number or a, when you get dispatched?
We have a call sign on the radio, and each vehicle is assigned its own unit number as well.
So looking on Exhibit 5, Badger Street, I don't know if you see, but do you see your car number on Exhibit 5? Or Rebecca Taylor's?
Honestly, I don't remember what her call sign was at the time. She's not with me anymore, so I don't remember what her call sign was. I'm 273, but I wouldn't have been
You were there. So when y'all get to Lonsdale, what do you observe? What do you do?
The patrol units had cordoned off the scene with yellow crime scene tape. There were a lot of patrol officers there. There were also residents of the apartments there out in the area. We went inside the crime scene tape to one of the apartment buildings where on the porch there was a body laying with a blue sheet covering it.
After making that observation, what did you and Ms. Taylor do?
Ms. Taylor began taking her pictures. I was just kind of following along with her. We labeled a couple of items of evidence there on the porch where the the body was laying. We moved the sheet back to take some more pictures. And then we went to the street where we had been notified that a number of shell casings had been located.
What did you observe in the street?
There were quite a few shell casings laying along the street. It was within eyesight of where the body was laying on the porch.
So what did y'all do as it relates to the casings?
We marked each one that we found with an evidence marker and photographed each of them individually. And once they've been photographed, we collected them one at a time.
And are you the one who actually collected them?
Eddie Johnson and I collected them from the street while Rebecca took more pictures.
And I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you could, I would ask you to step down and show the jury the difference between the 9mm casings and a 40 casing. We've already moved these into evidence, but if you want to explain to the jury about this packaging, I'm going to ask you to show Exhibit 5 and Exhibit 4 in 7. Explain to them how you package stuff.
Each shell casing is placed within one of these envelopes, and of course it's sealed and labeled. I initialed each one just to show that I was the one that sealed it. It's marked with evidence marker 27. That's the number that it was in the street as I marked each one individually. It has the case number related to the thing, the date and the time that it was collected, and then we describe each casing with things like caliber, the brand of the casing, as much information as we can get from it is placed on this envelope.
So, and we've already moved those into evidence. If you could, you need some scissors.
Maybe I'll look.
Thank you, sir.
This one is evidence marker 27. It's a 9mm.
Now, how do you know it's a 9mm?
There on this end of the casing, this is the round end. If you look at it, there's writing on there called headstand, and it usually tells you things like caliber, brand. So we look at each of these individually so that we can document what type of casing it is.
All right, and so if you could keep that one out and open up Exhibit 5.
Exhibit 5.
Exhibit 5. Can you show us that one as well so we can see the difference between the two?
This one is evidence marker 15, and it's a 40 caliber.
And the same question, how are you able to determine that's a 40 caliber?
These also have the headstand at the end that tells you the brand and the caliber of the bullet itself. And this is the 40, and this is the 9. They're different sizes, different brands.
And what do you notice about the damage to the casing? What does that tell you?
This 40, you can see the 9mm is more round, and the 40 is kind of crimped. It looks like it could have been either stepped on or ran over with a car. They were in the street, and sometimes vehicles or people can pass through seeing before we get it set up or roped off. So that happens sometimes.
Okay. Now, after collecting the casings, that's one step Lonsdale. Did you have occasion to go back to Lonsdale and do something as it relates to the van?
Yes, a few days later, we were called back there because the owner of one of the vehicles that had been parked there during the shooting that night let us know that he had located a part of a bullet inside his vehicle.
And do you recognize Exhibit 511?
Yes.
What is Exhibit 511?
This is the bullet fragment that I retrieved from the front passenger side door of that van.
And what did you do with that bullet fragment?
I photographed and packaged it similar to what was done with the other ones from the scene.
And is that Exhibit 511?
Yes.
Like who says Exhibit 511?
Any
No
objection?
objection, Your Honor.
Very well, the exhibit 511.
All right, so going back to the 17th of December, once you package up all of the casings, you go back to the Knoxville Police Department. What are you guys doing there at the Knoxville Police Department?
There with the evidence, we seal it there if it hasn't already been done on the scene. With the red evidence tape where it's initialed and dated, and then that's placed into bigger packaging and it's taken to property or confiscations.
What happens while y'all are working on that evidence?
We got a call that there was another incident at another location at the Green Hills Apartments.
So what do you then do?
We got into the car and went to that scene.
And again, who all goes?
Rebecca Taylor and I.
And where is that scene at?
On, I believe, Natchez, the Green Hills Apartments.
Where is that close or far from the city county building? From here?
From here, it's not very far.
Is it close or far from the Knoxville Police Department?
It's very close.
And when you get to Green Hills, describe the layout of Green Hills for us.
We entered the apartment complex and it goes downhill just a little bit, and we were notified that there were a couple of casings there inside the entrance of the apartment complex in the roadway. And then to the right, we were told that there was a car that had ran into one of the apartment buildings.
So when you pull into Green Hills, you go to the right and to the left? And what's the layout of Green Hills?
Yeah, you can go either direction. There's a lot of buildings in that particular neighborhood.
And directing your attention to Exhibit 475. Do you recognize Exhibit 475? Yes, she said.
Is it okay?
You may.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the Green Hills Apartments here.
And on this diagram, do you see Natchez Avenue?
I do, it's here.
And how would you enter into Green Hills from Natchez?
There's an entrance here. This is the one that we entered that night.
And can you show us where the building was with the car crashing into the building?
What was this one?
And on this diagram, do you see where you observed the casings?
There were two just inside here. There's a third one in this grassy area. And then we were notified.
Counter man, walk over here.
Here.
And what I'm going to ask you to do, using this black marker, just give us the general area first, where the first two casings were in the road that we first pulled in.
They were about right here, the first two.
And did you circle that? Can you? Okay. And if you could, with a X, can you give us the general area where the other casing was in the grass? And where was that in relationship to a building? Is that building A? Is that building there?
I think so, yeah.
And you could, with another X, give us the general location where the other casings were on Natchez. I can move this in as Exhibit 475.
No objection, Mr. Bassett.
No objection.
No objection.
Exhibit 475.
Yes, sir.
I thought we already had a 475.
Yeah, I'll get one.
We've already got a 475, General.
And that's going to be
Yeah.
475 each.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, I have no objection to it, I just don't.
Casey.
Yeah, it's a 475 is marker number 3. It is a 40 caliber Blazer casing.
473. Can I make this 475A?
No objection. What are we going to, for descriptive purposes, call that the Green Hills
Green Hills.
overview?
Yeah, cages match, getting the cages match.
No problem, thank you.
475A.
So folks, you figured out what we're doing here. 475 and 475A are not related at all, and just helps us distinguish. We've already marked them, and we made a mistake in the marking. So 475 and 475A are not necessarily connected. We're just making it an A, so you don't have to change the number.
Thank you.
Can I approach?
Hold on a second.
Sorry.
So,
General.
General, it's not a bad thing,
now showing you these exhibits. 521, 521A, 522, 523, 524, 525, 526, 527, 528, and 529. Do you recognize these exhibits here?
I do.
And how are you able to recognize these exhibits? You can turn around.
They have my handwriting on them. And the way that they're numbered and sealed.
And where did you collect those items of evidence from?
These were collected at Green Hills.
Now, could you, looking at the items that you collected, could you show us on this diagram where those items were collected from? Yes.
Your Honor, may I step over again?
Turn. You want to start?
And you want, I can hold.
This is the Law&Crime.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Numbers 1 and 2 were here,
And again, that's,
with the black circle is, as we pull the other back there.
When you
when you say 1 and 2, what are they? What caliber casings are they?
They're shell casings and they're both at 45.
45 caliber?
Number 3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Number 3 is the one that we located here in this grassy area, and it's a 9mm.
Now, and what's the brand?
It's a Luger.
EMC?
EMC.
Okay.
And then I have 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That I believe were recovered here at the entrance.
Where are they?
They are all 9mm Luger EMCs. This one is not outside, this one was inside.
This is down inside the park. Thank you, sir. And before you sit down, I was going to ask you, you've shown us a 9mm casing and a 40 caliber casing. Can you open 527. Now, in addition to collecting casings and processing that scene, what did you do after y'all left Green Hills?
After we left Green Hills, we took the evidence back to the police department, and we made sure that everything was labeled and packaged, and turned it into confiscations.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir. I have no objection to that.
Now, did you also go and collect clothes from Brandon Perry at the Emmy's office?
We did collect that clothing. I believe that came from UT Hospital.
I'm sorry, UT Hospital. And showing you these photos. Do you recognize these photos?
Yes, I did.
Who do you recognize these photos?
Photos of the clothing that we collected from UT Hospital.
Like this is exhibits 218 through 224.
Yeah, Jack.
No, Your Honor.
Because it's 218 to 224.
Display to the jury, please. 218. What is exhibit 218?
It's a hooded sweatshirt.
219.
That's the back of the sweatshirt.
220.
Blue jeans.
And what do you notice about the left side of the blue jeans?
It has a rib there on the left leg, and the reddish brown staining.
Okay. 221.
It's the back of the jeans.
222.
Shoes, a bandana, and 2 socks.
223.
Black bandana.
224.
2 red shoes.
Exhibit 512. You recognize exhibit 512?
I did.
What is exhibit 512?
The clothing that we saw in the pictures are packaged inside here.
You like to exhibit 512 in its evidence?
Any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit 512.
And if you could, I would like to display the jeans and the shoes, please.
No objection.
And the hoodie. okay for us to make sure you.
These are the shoes.
It's fine if you can speak up just a little bit.
These are the shoes that we collected. These are the widgets. The black hooded sweatshirt is not in this bag, it may be a different one. Do you want me to show this shirt as well?
Please. Yeah, you want to tell the jury why the shirt is cut up?
This clothing is how we received it from the hospital. This was probably cut either by the ambulance crew or once it got to the hospital by the hospital personnel.
Was there a black bandana?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry, AJ. I'm sorry. She said she. Oh,
Did you want me to show this?
Sure.
And this is the black and white bandana that we retrieved from the hospital as well. Your socks. Down.
also collect clothing from the Amy's office belonging to Mr. Dobson.
Yes, I
Recognize the city. 531.
do. Yes.
What is exhibit 531?
This is the clothing and other articles that belong to Zaevion that we collected from his office.
And you collected that? His office. I'd like to move that in as collective 531.
Any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit 531.
And what we're interested in is going to be the shirts. You can display the shirts, please. You see a bullet defect?
So there's one right here, near the right chest area.
I'm gonna break it.
Take a short recess. You leave it. All right, welcome back, everyone. Ms. Dobson, you okay? I understand it's very difficult. Just feel free if any point you need to get up and leave. It's okay. I know that was just a natural reaction to overcome. It's okay, all right? All right, does anybody want me to make an instruction to the jury, or y'all want me to leave it alone? Ms. Lee?
Your Honor, I make a motion for mistrial. It's unfairly prejudicial to our clients.
All right. Anybody else joining in that? Jones?
Your Honor, I think what you've instructed and dealt with, I mean, I certainly extend sympathy to the family. I don't think at this point in time, if it were to continue, may be an issue, but I think the court's adequately addressed it.
Mr. Rogers? All right, what I'll do is, I'm not going to declare mistrial if there's any need, there's no manifest necessity for mistrial here. I think the jurors understand, nobody's arguing that Mr. Dobson was not killed, and so I think everybody understands a mother's grief. And I will give a limiting instruction about sympathy at this point, but I'm not going to grant a mistrial. All right, John, you ready for the jury? Yes. You ready, Ms. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Ready, Ms. Lee? Yes, sir. All right, go ahead, Tom, bring it on, sir. Anthony, maybe see the statement of the call jury.
Yes.
Wait, Thomas Jones.
So wait.
Thomas Lee. Thomas Robinson. Oh, welcome back, folks. Thanks for that break. I want to point something out to you. Anytime we try a case in here, it creates a lot of emotion. This case is no different than that. And I think we all can understand a mother's pain in this. I want to remind you of something that I said at the very beginning of jury selection. I'll tell you again at the end. Our job as jurors and my job as a judge is to judge facts and the law. We are human beings. I don't check my humanity when I put this robe on, and you don't check your humanity when you sit in that jury box. However, you just need to separate your sympathy that you may have for someone, a lost family member, with your job to judge the facts and the law in this case. So I'll just caution you on that. It's perfectly fine to be sympathetic. I'd be surprised if you weren't. Just don't let that cloud your evaluation of the facts and law. All right, great. Joe, you may continue. Ms. Fine, you understand you're still on the road? All right, go ahead, Joe.
All right, and if you could show us the undershirt,
Yes.
please.
This is the T-shirt that belonged to Zaevion that we retrieved from the medical examiner's office.
Is there a bullet defect as well?
There is, in about the same place that was on the sweatshirt.
Like 531.
This is the bullet that we recovered from the medical examiner's office that was recovered from Zaevion's body.
I put that in the zip 510.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection. Zip 510.
Now, in the break, did we get a chance to reach out to KPD about the hoodie?
We did. The hoodie shown in the pictures was not retrieved from UT Hospital. That's
Your Honor, can I
Yeah,
I think I know which picture she's holding up, but I just seem to, just wanted to make sure it's there.
and we could also clarify where it was supposed to be, because I'm not sure we talked about section one, I'm not sure which one we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
the one we,
Please,
the one
218 and 219. Where 218 is, and 219, I think you can see it.
This is one of the ones that we recovered at the scene at Green Hills. This was not a sweatshirt that Brandon Perry was wearing once he got to the hospital. This was one of the ones found on the scene.
So is that going to be exhibit 513 and 514?
Yes.
When you want to display those.
513 and 514 are two black studies that have already been introduced in the evidence.
Yes, sir.
Just so we can be clear.
At the Green Hill scene by the car, right?
She displayed one earlier and said it was Brandon Perry, so are there 3 hoodies or 2s?
She displayed one earlier and said it was Mr. Dobson's.
Okay.
Yeah. That was part of 531.
Which, that is evidence marker
10.
10.
This is number 10. This is one of the sweatshirts that we found outside of the car that was crashed into.
Please, and that's what the evidence exhibit 514.
This is the other sweatshirt that was found outside of the car that was crashed into the apartment building at Green Hills.
Can you tell that that has been sent to TBI? Anything on the bags?
It appears so because of the markings here. These were not, the markings were not on this when we collected it from the scene. It's something that's been added by TBI.
Passwords?
You get to go first, sir?
We were debating amongst ourselves, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I think that's Mr. Jones.
Ms. Fine, in your capacity as an evidence tech, you're called generally to the scene after the offense has occurred, correct?
Yes,
And your obligation and your responsibility as an officer with the Knoxville Police Department is to gather as much evidence as is available to you, right?
yes,
And at this point in time, there were other personnel that were similarly situated, such as yourself. One of the ladies that we've already heard from, I believe she testified yesterday, her name was Rebecca Taylor, right? Is that right?
yes, I was with Rebecca.
Okay, and she was training you, right?
Yes,
Okay, and it's fair to say then, she was in sort of the same capacity you were, right?
sort of.
Okay, and you mentioned another gentleman's name that was also an evidence tech. What was his name?
Eddie Johnson.
Okay, just so that our jurors are aware, how many evidence techs are there at the Knoxville Police Department? And let's confine it to back on or about December 17th, 2015.
There were several, 7 or 8. They weren't working that night. The 3 of us were the only technicians working that night.
When you worked at KPD as an evidence tech on or about December 17th, 2015, How many were working? The 3 that we've already mentioned?
Yes, 3 of us.
Okay. And what was your shift?
I believe it was 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. That's what I work now. I think it was the same then.
Okay. Now, I believe, and I want to make sure that we get in order, kind of, at least from a date and time. The general asked you about this was an unusual night because you got called out on multiple homicides, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the first homicide that you got called out on, of course, is what we referred to as the Lonsdale matter. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And the Lonsdale matter, which you've now learned, you didn't know then, but when you got there, that would have been the situation in which Mr. Dobson unfortunately lost his life, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you got there, did you travel in the same evidence collection vehicle as Miss Taylor, or were you at that point in time operating your own Knoxville Police Department vehicle?
We were in the same vehicle she was driving.
Okay. Was Mr. And I'm sorry, I remembered his first name, but I'm like I said, I flipped to the front and I got lost. Was Mr., is it Johnson?
Yes.
Was he in the same vehicle or was he in a separate
He was
vehicle?
in a separate vehicle.
Who arrived first, yourself and Miss Taylor or Mr. Johnson?
At Lonsdale,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Taylor and I arrived first.
Okay. When you arrived first, did you approach the crime scene where the deceased lay, or did you begin on the outside and work your way in?
We began outside to take Rebecca took just a few pictures, and then we approached the scene where Zaevion was.
Who physically, and I understand he was deceased, who physically, and what I'm talking about is yourself, Evidence Tech Taylor, or Evidence Tech Johnson dealt with the body of Zaevion Dobson?
Physically, that would have been Technician Taylor.
Okay. Who would have been responsible then for gathering whatever evidence that there was available from the body?
From the body?
The body of Mr. Dobson.
Okay. We didn't take anything from the body of Zaevion on the scene.
Would you describe for the jury the steps when you arrive at a crime scene and there is a deceased that you take to preserve the body in the form that it was, as far as making sure that all evidence contained therein or on or about that person is preserved?
We wear protective clothing, whatever's necessary, but mostly gloves, but sometimes we can wear other pieces if it's necessary. And we photograph everything as is before anything is touched.
And then do you take steps with the actual body as far as, are y'all the ones that covers the body, or how does that work?
We generally don't cover the body. Usually the body is covered by fire department or EMS before we get there. We don't cover them, and we don't move the body until after the medical examiner's office personnel is on scene with us.
At this particular scene over on Badgett, did Investigator Leffler arrive before or after you arrived, to your recollection?
I don't remember. I think he may have been there before us, but I couldn't say for sure.
Do you normally interact or allow the investigator to see the position of the body and examine it before you actually then have the ME's office move the body?
They come and look at it. We don't allow them to move anything.
In this particular case, who directed you to bag the hands of Zaevion Dobson?
The medical examiner's office bagged the hands.
Okay. What's the purpose of bagging the hands?
So that his hands or the deceased's hands can be tested later on if necessary.
And it's fair to say, again, that your responsibility, just like Miss Taylor's responsibility, is to gather evidence, correct?
Yes.
You don't test evidence, do you?
No.
Okay. That's left to experts with agencies such as the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
Yes.
And also, relative to these shell casings that you've described, there's a number of shell casings that you helped Ms. Taylor collect, correct?
Yes.
And those are provided to an officer within your department, Patricia Ressig, correct?
Yes.
And it's actually her responsibility to do the physical testing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you arrive at the scene and begin collecting evidence, you depend upon basically that scene to have been preserved and kept in the same state it was when the crime happened, don't you?
We depend upon the patrol officers who are the first to arrive on scene to preserve the scene until we get there, yes.
And you are taught in forensic training that contamination of a scene is a bad thing, right?
Yes.
And that contamination can occur by the general public invading a crime scene, correct?
Yes.
I could be walking along and I could inadvertently kick a shell case, and that would move it from its physical location that it was at the time that it landed after the ejection of the firearm, right?
Yes.
That could likewise be law enforcement personnel or other vehicles traveling up and down a roadway, correct?
Yes.
So, in fact, when you showed one of these shell casings, that shell casing to you was indicative, remember the one that was kind of squished? That was indicative to you that somehow that there had been a defect that had occurred between the time the shell was ejected and the time you collected it, correct?
Yes.
Do you know which officer was in charge of the crime scene when you got there?
No, I do not.
Do you recall, and I don't know, so I'm asking that dangerous question when a lawyer doesn't know, but in your chain of command, are you under the command of the normal sergeants and lieutenants and captains of patrol, or do y'all have in the forensic unit a sergeant or a lieutenant or somebody of that nature?
The forensics unit has its own sergeant and lieutenant, but we also answer to the command of other sergeants and lieutenants on patrol.
You would have to follow whatever their direction is, correct? And would an investigator likewise be someone that would be, if you would, qualified to give you direction or tell you what to do, or if they noticed a bullet defect out there, they could say, Officer Fine, could you photograph that?
They can point things out to me.
Okay, super. And when you arrived, there were a lot of citizens out there, and when I say citizens, residents of the Lonsdale community, correct?
Yes.
And you don't know how long they've been there?
No.
Okay. And you said subsequently that you received a call several days later about a maroon van, right, from the owner?
Yes.
Okay. When you arrived there that night, do you know whether or not that maroon van was there or not? And I'm talking about on the night of December 17th, 2015, at approximately a little past 10 o'clock.
It was there.
Okay. Do you know whether or not that vehicle was operable or inoperable as of that time? By that I mean, could somebody have gotten it and driven it, moved it, done anything with it?
I couldn't say.
Okay. When you went back out at the behest of the owner, how did you come to go back out to collect evidence? I mean, somebody had to tell you, Officer Fine, we need you to go to collect it. Just tell me how you physically got back out there. I'm not complaining about you doing it. I just want to know, so we know mechanism-wise, how you got back out there.
I don't remember specifically how we were notified to go back out there. Usually those calls come to us through dispatch, but I don't recall exactly what happened that night.
Do you recall the defect being on the passenger side of the van?
Yes,
And that defect then, when you came up Badgett, right, that van would have then been on the left side, right?
yes,
Okay. In the left side, if that van was facing, if you will, south on Badgett, whatever direction, the passenger side would have been out and readily apparent to the street, wouldn't it?
if it was parked in that direction, yes.
Okay. Do you remember which direction it was parked?
From the pictures of the scene that night, it was parked with the passenger side facing outward.
Right, I'm not trying to trick you. I mean, I'm asking questions I know the answer to, just so that you're aware, okay? So with the passenger side then being parked out, being observant, you could see what was there to be seen, right? If there was a bullet, we've learned that the proper terminology is defect. If there was a defect in this maroon van, then you should have been, or Miss Taylor or Mr. Johnson, should have been able to have discerned it, correct?
Yes,
Okay, you're human beings. You could have missed it, and it could have occurred at some other point in time, couldn't it?
it's possible.
Okay, you really don't know when that bullet defect occurred, do you?
There's no way to time it, no.
Okay. And likewise, all of these casings that were collected in Lonsdale, you're assuming that they came from the events of December 17th, 2015 at approximately 10:08 p.m., but you didn't age any of these cases. There's no way for you to know where those cases came from, is there?
There's no way for me to know, no.
You had come on to shift earlier that night. Are you aware of whether or not you or any other member of your evidence team, the collection team, the three of you, and it's okay if you're not, were dispatched to 934 Virginia Avenue to pick up shell casings on a drive-by?
I don't know.
Okay. When you arrived at the scene, did you check in with an officer and sign in on a crime scene log, or did you see Evidence Tech Taylor do that as well?
I don't remember.
Okay. Are you trained as a forensic tech relative to the sanctity of a crime scene that you need to check in and out of crime scenes?
I know that there should be an officer on scene making a list of everyone who's on the scene.
And noting when folks came and when folks left, right? And that's important both to the investigation but also to the forensic team so that you avoid contamination, right? And relative to, we'll move on to Green Hills, okay? So I'm going to shift gears with you a little bit. And the Green Hills address is, I understand it, and I may be off just a little bit, that's on Natchez, right?
Yes.
Now, I've got 1904, it could be 1902, but in generalities, it's on Natchez, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, you're finishing up at Lonsdale. How long did you stay out at Lonsdale?
I don't remember. It was a while.
Okay. And the bag that contains Mr. Dobson's clothing, you know, it gets bagged up as evidence. And I'm not going to touch anything in there necessarily right this minute, but I want to make sure, where did you sit in it?
It's in that box.
It's in this box?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The handwriting, if you would, on the outside of the bag, you know, it looks like it's written with a black Sharpie.
Yes,
Who wrote that?
I did.
Okay. So, that would have been then your responsibility to bag all of that information and that clothing up, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you've located a black hoodie, which you showed us,
Yes.
showed the jury, carried it in front of them, worn by Mr. Dobson, right?
Yes.
And do you recall on direct examination, Ms. Fitzgerald said all she wanted you to pull out was the shirt. Do you remember that?
The hoodie and the shirt,
The
yes.
hoodie and the shirt. Would you do me a favor? Would you pull out the tennis shoes out of the Zaevion Dobson box, please? They're in there, correct?
They're written on the other bag.
They're written on the back inside. And feel free if it helps you, yeah, sit it all the way in the room. Would you describe the three colors that are on that shoe for the benefit of the jury, and would you hold it up and walk in front of that jury with that shoe?
Colors are white, red, and black.
Would you expect, based upon your memory associated with this, that's the right shoe that you have in your hands, correct?
Yes, this is the right shoe.
And that the left shoe, as far as you know, is a make and would likewise contain the same three colors, red, white, and black, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And on those evidence bags, and I'm talking about the smaller evidence bags, and then the bigger evidence bag that you've indicated that is in your handwriting, what does it say about shoes?
This is the bag. This is medical examiner office packaging. This just indicates right or left shoe. On the bag that I filled out, it also indicates left shoe and right shoe.
Is there any descriptor with regards to the color of the shoes of Mr. Dobson?
Not on these bags, no.
Okay. You put that up, and I'm going to ask you a question now about Mr. Perry. believe this is Mr. Perry's bag. And while you're doing that, that's then your handwriting on the outside of the Perry bag, similar to your handwriting on the outside of the Dobson bag, correct?
Yes, I still
Okay. Those are the same shoes you showed earlier, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you hold up the bag that those shoes went in? And that's in your handwriting, correct?
Yes, yes.
And on that bag, you actually note red shoes, don't you?
Yes, I did.
But you don't comment on the color of the shoes of Mr. Dobson, do you?
Yes.
And once again, your job as an evidence tech is to collect the evidence, not to opine on it, right?
Objection, asked and answered.
That's fine. I think it's already clear. Relative to the black hoodie, okay? There are 2 black hoodies recovered from Green Hills, correct?
Yes.
And you reported one as being Mr. Perry's, right?
Earlier,
Yes, ma'am.
I
Took it out of a bag, or at least it's listed on a bag as being belonging to Brandon Perry, right?
took Zaevion's. I took Zaevion's.
That is not true at all.
I'm gonna say, rephrase your question.
That's fine, I'll rephrase it. You've got a bag over here that has Brandon Perry, black hoodie, correct?
I have his name on it and the description of the hoodie that was recovered from the scene.
Okay. But you're assuming that's Brandon Perry's black hoodie, right?
No, it was not on his person. It was outside of the car when we got there. Brandon Perry was not on scene when we were there.
Okay, so you don't know whose hoodie it
Yeah, I
is.
couldn't say.
And there were 2 hoodies outside of the scene, right?
There were 2.
Nothing further. Well, excuse me, nothing further on that issue. Relative to the black bandana off of in Mr. Perry's personal items, it was rolled up in which someone would wear it as a headband. It wasn't rolled up as like some sort of a bandit mask or anything of that nature, was it?
I didn't see him wear it.
Okay. But in the condition that it's in that bag, it doesn't have like the triangle coming down covering somebody's face, does it?
Rolled into a strip.
Thank you. Relative to the collection of the casings from Green Hills, Ms. Fitzgerald asked you to describe what you call the stamp on the back that tells us, if you will, the manufacturer and the caliber,
The
right?
head stamp, yes.
And do you recall what the head stamp was on the 9mm casings?
I don't.
Does PMC sound familiar?
It does.
Okay. That being said, you found PMC casings, 9mm casings, in the areas that you have circled. Right, let's see, I'm not sure that I'm right. The black circle is, and that's what we're looking at right here, right?
Yes,
That's the 45 caliber casings or the 9mm casings?
Those are evidence markers 1 and 2. I would have to see my notes. I don't remember which caliber they
Can
were.
you glance and look at the exhibits and tell us and make sure one more time?
Oh, yeah, actually, you want to write it on there.
I think that might be good for clarity later on. Give us some markers. Now, sit, because I don't want to leave problems there.
Evidence markers 1 and 2 are 45 caliber.
Would you put a .45 in the circle there?
Which number are we marking on here?
This was exhibit number 475 in the black circle. Yeah, in the black circle, she was written .45 in there.
And can you say times 2, please? Sorry.
And the 2 X's are where 9mm casings were found, correct?
Yes.
And when you got there, and let's use a different color. Will you grab a different color, maybe a blue? I don't think we use blue. Would you mark where the BMW was? The black BMW that crashed into the building, okay?
Black BMW was here.
You write BMW for it, yes. Thank you. And in distance, I understand that from discussions with the other crime scene tech, Ms. Taylor, relative to the Lonsdale shooting, they utilized instruments and things of that nature, but did you measure in distance from the X's, the 9mm case location, to the point where the car was crashed into the building?
I did not. I couldn't say for Bethany did or not.
Don't know if anybody did.
I don't know.
Would you agree with me that that is a significant distance from where the car was crashed? I mean, it's more than 50 feet, more than 100 feet. It's a pretty good distance, isn't it?
I don't know how far it is.
Okay. Whatever the picture shows, the picture shows. Would you agree with me there? The Exhibit 510, the bullet fragment collected from the ME, you then secured that in evidence so that it could be later tested and utilized by whichever expert was going to give testimony associated with that, right?
Which one is that?
That is the bullet that you picked up from the ME 510?
For Zaevion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr.
This is the email cross.
Ms. Fine, so you photographed Zavion's body?
Lieutenant Taylor photograph.
Okay, but you were there?
I was there.
Okay. Did you have any contact with his body?
No,
You didn't touch it in any way?
I don't believe so.
So you're not sure?
I'm not sure. Once the medical examiner gets there, sometimes we assist with moving a body just to take more detailed photographs. I honestly don't recall if I helped that night.
Okay. So you're not sure if you assisted move the body in any way?
I don't believe so, but I could take a sure.
Okay, that's all I have.
Rudders.
During that time period, were you were being trained by Officer Taylor? Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you with her that entire week?
I don't remember. There were several technicians that I trained with. I was with her that night.
And when you went to the scene, that was after 10 o'clock at night on the Lonsdale scene, is that correct?
Yes.
And Green Hills as well, was later, actually earlier the next morning.
Yes.
And it was around the same time of year as we are right now, right?
Yes.
Which is outside of daylight savings time, so it was pretty dark. Is that fair to say? Were you with Officer Taylor when she took the photographs on the scene at Lonsdale?
I was with her most of the time. She took additional photographs while I collected shell casings with technician Johnson.
And with it being dark, was the light for the photographs provided artificially so that you could find the shell casings and find the things on the porch?
We relied on the street lights. We have flashlights, and to aid in the photography, we have a flash on our cameras.
Okay, so the light in the photographs aren't necessarily depict the light on the scene if you weren't taking flashes or using artificial light to light up the scene, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then with regards to the shells at both Green Hills and at the Lonsdale scene, and did you, I'm sorry I missed this earlier, I thought you said, did you respond to the Dallas Street scene as well?
I did, just to observe.
Okay. And that was earlier in the night, right?
It was.
Were you there to take pictures, when they took pictures of any of the shell casings on the road there?
At Dallas?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then you showed the shell casing that had a dent in it or was bent, and I know Mr. Jones already asked you this, but with regards to the Green Hill scene, with regards to the Lonsdale scene or the Dallas scene, there's no way to know when those shells were there.
There's no way for me to tell how old they are.
Okay. That's all I have.
Carol?
Just from all, can you add in there the X's? Can you put 9 millimeters? So that, the one over there in the grass, how many 9 millimeter cases did you find there?
One.
It was like 9 millimeter, one. And that other X, do like 9 millimeter times 9 millimeter times.
Just to clarify, the 2 9 millimeters are marked with a red X on there. Is that right?
I think a black X.
A black X.
The location, is that correct?
It's marked
The
with red.
location is indicated by the light.
Well, maybe we just, the red just run
Caliber
over.
number.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, anything else?
No, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Rogers? Thank you. Anybody sit down? I think we got time for another witness before lunch, Joe.
Oh,
Let's start. We'll start anyway.
Ms. Whitaker, she's the keeper of the records for the video at Green Hills.
Okay.
And Your Honor, if I can use your projector eventually.
Yeah, when you're ready.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
If you would please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the case now on trial with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? That's it, man.
Please give us your name, ma'am.
It's Karen Whitaker,
Can you spell your last name for us?
WHITAKER.
Ma'am, back on December 18, 2015, where were you working?
Green Hill Apartments,
What did you do for Green Hills Apartments?
property manager.
Tell us, what is Green Hills?
It's a Section 8 housing complex.
Now, and you're familiar with the layout of Green Hills?
Yes.
Green Hills, are there video cameras in Green
Yes.
Hills? Where are the video cameras? Where are they situated?
Everywhere, just about.
Outside the building?
Outside the building.
Any inside the building?
There's one in the laundry room.
Now, showing you Exhibit 475A. Do you recognize this layout here?
Yes.
Can you orient yourself?
Yes.
And what is this a diagram of, your area photo of?
The surrounding complex and probably the clear line Green Hill.
Now, did you provide the Knoxville Police Department video cameras, video footage from Green Hills from December 17th into December 18th, 2015?
I did.
Specifically 3 discs?
Yes.
We'd like to move to evidence these 3 discs.
No objection.
It's going to be, for the record, it's going to be Exhibit 457, 458, and 459.
Do we have any designation to differentiate?
Yes, sir. I was going to start with, let me start with Exhibit 457. Now, explain to us, what about the time? How does the time get on these videos?
This was programmed into the system at the beginning, so there's usually a lot of incidents, so it needs to be time-dated and stamped.
Okay. And so, where is this camera situated at?
This one is back on the building right near the office, and it's shooting up from the left side of the office into that area.
And this is at the top, it looks like Reading Learning Center?
Yeah, the cameras are on that center, on the learning center, which is on the back side of the office.
Okay. And what's the time up there on the wall?
155, 56.
And what I'd like to do, I'd like to play a portion of this video. And again, where are we looking at?
You're looking at the back, like I said, the office is over to your right, and there's an apartment building situated here, down 3 steps, and the camera is on the next building, and it's shooting straight up.
Here you go. If you don't mind to point that out. With the laser right there. I'm sorry, up there on the wall. You have to hit the little black button.
They just do this, just do a touch screen, and you can just mark on that, and mark it on the screen.
The camera is back here on this building, and it's shooting in this direction, covering this area. The office, like I said, is situated over here, and there's a building here, and the learning center is this building over here.
All right.
Do you want me to preserve that, or can we erase that?
No.
We'll go ahead and erase it.
All right, so 157, let's see what happens. Can we turn those lights off back there?
Is that Oscar?
So this camera picked up what?
The car running into the building.
And were you able to see that?
Yes.
What were you able to see?
I saw, everybody scattered and go in different directions after the guarding the building.
Okay.
There should be another view where you see guys running from back behind this building here.
It is, and we're gonna play that, but I just wanted to first explain what the happening
Now, they
was.
were coming into the entrance, and I guess I can't speculate, but something happened right at the entrance which would cause him to just run.
And let's back up a little bit, because do you see movement before the car crashes?
Yes.
And if we could, let's look up there to the right part of the parking lot.
You can see that guy right here.
Yes, ma'am. And do you notice the movement now? 157.
Yeah, they're starting to run the car.
And look at the car. 1, 2 people? Okay. And what are you seeing people do now?
Just coming out, they were coming out of the building, running, looking, scatting, and taking off.
And can you tell where they're running to? Like the ones that are running to the right, where would they be running to?
Out the entrance.
Up there near Natchez?
Yes.
Now that first building there, when you turn into Natchez, what building number is that?
That is building 11
Okay.
on
Is it-
the left,
Okay.
or on the right, and building 10 is on the left.
And then finally, And so I want to keep watching this until the police arrive. And so again, while we're waiting for the police to arrive, remind us again, what is up this way?
That's the entrance and the office that's situated to your right, and the building 10. It matches the entrance.
And so at 2:03, do you see that police car arrive?
Yes.
All right. Now this was exhibit 457. We're seeking to introduce the whole recording.
The whole video. Folks, what Ms. Fitzgerald was just pointing out is that the entire video is in, but she didn't show you the whole thing. If you want to watch the whole thing, there's the directions you can. The other participants show additional parts of it. The whole video is in evidence.
All right, now 458. Now, directing your attention to the wall, where is this location?
That's the entrance of that. That's the building 10 over here, and this is building 11.
All right.
You're coming in, you can either go this way or here.
Now, from the previous video we watched, that where does that camera? That car that came in and crashed into the building? Which route would it?
It's this way.
Okay. All right. And so when we saw people running, what direction would they have been running to?
They would have been running from here, because they were standing in this area.
Yes, ma'am.
They would either be running this way or back out to the entrance.
And again, remind us what's over here. What building is this?
11.
And so the people would have been running this way.
I saw a lot of them, they were running behind the building or straight out in front of it.
And in front of the building, is there a grassy area?
There's a parking area.
Okay.
And a grassy area.
And a grassy area. All right. Now if we can clear that screen and jump to 157. Or 155. All right, what's the time?
5708.
And let's pay attention to this area right here. You see,
Second person running.
so there was two people you saw there,
Turn around and came back.
and you see the two people walking back. And I know that we don't like to turn all the lights off, but we probably do have to turn all of them off in order to see.
Go ahead, Oscar.
Just back up a little bit. Yeah, 'cause I didn't see. Jim, we're gonna be looking over here, huh? Did you notice that? At 157? What did you notice at 157?
Someone was standing.
What did you notice about that?
Just moving.
And where does that person continue on?
I'll look at it right there. And here comes the second person.
Thank you. And again, the same thing with this exhibit. We'd like to make sure the whole video is in.
Yes, all three of them are in their entirety.
So the first one was 457, that one was 458, and then this last one, let's look at the view, 459. Oh, this was 457. We'll find out, put it in and see. Let's just look and see.
It is 457.
And I know we don't like to do this, but if you don't mind, when we get to 157, I'm gonna ask to turn off all the lights so that we can, now, this is 459. Now, what angle are we looking at here?
This is coming off of building 10, with 4 cameras on it. So we're looking from the left, heading back to, in that direction where the car went.
All right, so now what building is this here?
10, this is building 10 right here.
Okay,
And building 11 here.
that's building 11. And this road right here, what is this road?
This is the entrance to Natchez.
And what is over this way?
I'm sorry.
I apologize. Explain to us that and then that.
This is, like I said, Natchez entrance, and you're going in and you're coming around, and the office is situated over here, and then the car went in the other direction that way.
And so remind us again, the people that were running, where would they have?
They were standing here, or there was a bunch of guys looking at the other way. They were all situated right in here.
And then if they're running this way, the Natchez would be up here?
Yes.
We can clear that and go to 157. What did you just notice at 157?
Those guys that were standing here started running in this direction.
Let's see. Let's look at that again, and you tell me if you see a flash.
I did see the flash. I'm sorry.
Let's look at that again.
Yeah.
Wait 1 second. Now, I apologize. We may have to clear it to make sure that doesn't. Can we clear that screen? I'm sorry.
I do. I like
Nah, you figured it out now.
I still have it. That's why I'm using the laser pointer.
Yeah, he's shooting at this car.
157. So that's the one person that runs. What do you see now at 158?
Another person running in car lights.
And let's see if we can see him coming by.
Both run back.
And where are they running back towards?
Towards the car.
Thank you. So that was 150. 450. And is it okay if she would step down?
You may set that man. That next person.
On 475A, again, can you describe what is the entrance. What did you say?
The area, it runs down and around into the complex. So this is the entrance. The camera, there's a camera, 4 cameras on this building. And then the learning center comes down and around here. And the cameras that were pointing upward were on this building. So you could see what was going on up there.
And what building number is that?
That's building 14.
And then this is Natchez here? And is this the entrance?
Yeah.
That's the office there? Thank you. Excellent. Yeah, who was passed the witness?
Ms. Lee, you may cross examine.
I have no question, John.
Mr. Rogers, questions?
He just keeps ending up with me, you know. Ms. Whitaker, I've just got a couple of questions for you. Who actually contacted you to pull this video?
I want to say, the police called to see, because I was supposed to be off that day.
Okay.
They,
I'm not taking any issue with it, but I just want to establish law enforcement got this video approximately a day or two after the 17th, or when?
I actually started vacation, so I don't know if I did. I didn't do it all that day. It was a few days.
Okay. But within, let's say, 7 days a week, law enforcement had access to this video, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you've made certain observations about this video. I think there was one point in time where you can clearly see somebody shooting in this ambush, right?
Right.
Okay. And did they go over it with you and point that flash out, or had you already seen that on your own?
I'd already seen it.
Okay. So you could tell these young men that were outside, we're assuming they're young men, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not being, they very likely were, but you nor me, we don't know. They could have been young women dressed up like young men. We don't know who they are, do we? Percentages are they're men, but we don't know, right? Is that fair enough?
That's fair enough.
Okay. And this shooting happens when this car pulls in there. We actually see 2 cars go in there, right? And I'm not being smart alecky because Miss Muffler's.
We would ask that you require to
Well, I was going to ask her to answer yes or no, Your Honor. I just didn't want her to think I was being smart with her.
That's okay.
Miss Muffler's taking it down, okay?
Okay.
So when you said was that you saw 2 cars enter?
I saw 2 cars in.
Okay. And how many cars did you see exit?
3.
Okay. And you saw these young men running after they clearly discharged firearms, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you go out there at any point in time and see shell casings out there? Okay. And it clearly looks like that they had lied in wait at the entrance to the apartment complex you manage, right?
Yes.
And the vehicle that we're talking about that ran into the building, that was a black BMW, right? Or to this day, do you know what kind it was?
To this day, I just don't know what kind it was.
Okay. Is it fair to say you've learned, obviously because you had to do repairs, but that there was a vehicle that ran into the building?
Yes.
How far in this diagram, you know, may I walk up? 475A, we talked about this a bunch, in distance from the place that the young men, I guess, did their ambush. How far in distance is it to where the vehicle crashed into the building?
There's a parking lot in between, so if you got cars on both sides, I'd say they were standing where the audience is, and the building was like right here, so not that far.
And are these shell casings, is that fairly indicative as to where these young men were standing?
Well, out of She
She
I
has.
would know because I didn't see any of them, but.
You just saw on the video.
I saw them.
She's about the
Yeah,
case.
they
She didn't
were-
see the case.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. These X's on here,
Mhm.
okay, I'll submit to you your shell casings, but whatever, let's just call them X's. Okay, the X's, is that where those young men were basically standing on the ambush?
Yes.
Nothing further.
General, redirect it.
want to make sure we're clear. The flash that we saw on the screen,
Yeah, that was them retaliating against the ones.
Your Honor, I object and ask that that be stricken. This, as far as retaliating, there's no way she knows that.
Well,
Wait, hold on, I'll say. You could have objected to his characterization. You didn't. You objected to her, so I'm going to sustain the objection on speculation that it was in retaliation. Now, General, redirect, you should talk about the orders, but the characterization of retaliation, I sustain, strike retaliation.
I want to make sure we're clear. The flash that we saw on the screen, when was that in sequence of the car crashing into the building?
that was after.
So after the car crashed into the building, then what do you see?
I see the two guys running and one shooting at the entrance.
And that person continues on into the street?
Yes.
That's all.
And then that person,
Let me give Ms. Lee an opportunity. Ms. Lee,
No, you're
Mr. Rogers.
and then that person comes back. You see him go and come, right? And you see him get in a car, right? You said something about they left in a car.
No, I didn't.
No, she
You
didn't.
didn't say something about they went back toward a car? Okay, I'm sorry then, I must have been mistaken, because I could have sworn you did. Thank you.
So I want to make sure we're clear. What do you recall the video showing after they came back from the street?
I saw them standing at the car, like they were wanting to get the gentleman out.
The car that crashed into the building?
Yes.
That's all.
Ms. Lee, Mr. Rogers, Mr.
And you don't know who any of these men are, do you?
General.
Nothing further.
No, sir.
Ms. Lee,
No, no.
Mr. Rogers, lunch now. Don't discuss the case among yourselves, leave notebooks and chairs, I'll see you after lunch. Thank you.